Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. 8,000 years ago, the map of northwestern Europe looked nothing like it does today. Between what is now Britain and Denmark stretched a vast and fertile landmass, river valleys, marshes, uplands, and coastlines teeming with fish and game, covering roughly 600,000 square kilometers. Mesolithic hunter-gatherers had lived there for thousands of years. They had camps, tools, networks, and the knowledge of every river and ridge in a landscape that no modern human has ever seen. Then the sea swallowed it. The drowning of Doggerland, named for Dogger Bank, the shallow North Sea sandbank that marks its highest surviving point, happened in stages as post-glacial sea levels rose. But the final, catastrophic end may have come in a single day. Around 6,200 BC, a submarine landslide off the coast of Norway, the Storegga Slide, displaced 3,000 cubic kilometers of sediment and generated a megatsunami that struck the Scottish coast, with waves estimated at 20 to 25 meters. Whatever Doggerland remained above the sea at that moment was likely swept. North Sea fishing trawlers have dredged up the bones of the people who lived there. Mesolithic tools, mammoth bones, antler harpoons, and fragments of human skull. Their world is now mapped in extraordinary detail from oil industry seismic surveys, but the civilization itself is gone. What was lost when the North Sea rose? This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. What separates a civilization from a collection of villages? Not technology alone, but organization. The capacity to coordinate thousands of people toward shared goals, to store and transmit knowledge across generations, to build institutions that outlast individuals. These are the hallmarks archaeologists look for when they define a civilization. And for most of the 20th century, the oldest examples they could identify dated to around 3,500 BC in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But that benchmark has been steadily eroding. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, discovered in the 1990s and excavated since, consists of massive stone circles with elaborately carved pillars depicting animals, abstract symbols, and human figures. It dates to at least 10,000 BC, roughly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and older than the invention of pottery or agriculture in the conventional sequence. Someone built it. Someone organized the quarrying, transport, and precise placement of limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Someone knew what they were building and why. That level of coordinated effort implies a society more complex than any model of 10,000 BC predicted. Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Every few years, a new site expands the timeline further. Ancient stone structures in Indonesia have been dated to 25,000 years ago. Complex astronomical alignments have been found at sites in Africa predating Egypt by millennia. The human story is older, richer, and more turbulent than the standard narrative allows. When we look at lost civilizations, we are not chasing fantasy. We are attempting to recover chapters of a history far longer than any currently recognized textbook will tell. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Doggerland was a landmass connecting Britain to mainland Europe, existing from the end of the last glacial maximum, approximately 20,000 years ago, until its final submersion roughly 8,000 years ago. At its maximum extent, it covered approximately 600,000 square kilometers, an area comparable to the combined area of modern France and Britain. It included river systems that were extensions of the Rhine and Thames, upland areas, marshes, and extensive coastlines supporting abundant Mesolithic wildlife. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Storegga submarine landslide, which occurred approximately 200 years ago, around 6,200 BC, displaced approximately 3,000 cubic kilometers of sediment on the Norwegian continental shelf. It generated a megatsunami that struck the Shetland Islands, the Scottish coast, and Norway, with waves estimated at 1025 meters in height. Tsunami deposits, distinctive layers of coarse sand far above normal wave reach, have been found in sedimentary sections across Scotland, Shetland, and Norway, confirming the event's reach. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine Doggerbank, currently a submerged sandbank in the central North Sea at depths of 1536 meters, was the highest terrain of Doggerland and the last area to be submerged. Fishing trawlers operating over Doggerbank have for over a century recovered Mesolithic artifacts in their nets. Flint tools, antler harpoon points, worked bone, and fragments of mammoth, rhinoceros, and other Pleistocene megafauna. A fragment of human skull recovered in 1931 remains one of the most significant finds. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Fossil Delta Project and subsequent Doggerland research program led by Vincent Gaffney at the University of Bradford used oil and gas industry seismic survey data, originally collected to map hydrocarbon-bearing strata, to reconstruct the topography of Doggerland in 3 dimensions. The resulting maps show river valleys, estuaries, lake basins, and coastlines of a fully articulated landscape that would have been among the most productive environments in Mesolithic Europe. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the population of Doggerland at its peak is unknown, but Mesolithic population densities in comparable European environments suggest tens of thousands of people may have lived there. These were not primitive wanderers. but skilled hunter-gatherers with detailed environmental knowledge, exchange networks, and material culture documented at adjacent sites in Britain and Scandinavia. As sea levels rose over millennia, they presumably retreated to higher ground, but the final tsunami may have caught communities still living on the remaining lowland margins. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Submarine sediment cores taken from the Storegga Slide site confirm a massive and rapid mass movement event approximately 200 years ago. Independent dating of tsunami deposits in Scotland, Norway, and Shetland corroborates the event's date and reach. The Storegga Slide is now understood to be one of the largest known submarine landslides in Earth's history, and its tsunami represents one of the most significant natural catastrophes to affect inhabited European territory in the Holocene. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the most widely supported view is that Doggerland was catastrophically destroyed by the Storegga megatsunami around 6,200 BC, backed by the coincidence of the tsunami date with the final period of Dogger Bank occupation as indicated by artifact dating. Under this model, remaining Doggerland communities were swept away in a single event. The main unresolved question is how much of Doggerland was still above sea level at the time of the tsunami versus already submerged by prior sea level rise. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that gradual abandonment as sea levels rose steadily after the last glacial maximum, human populations migrating incrementally to higher ground without a single catastrophic event defining their departure, is the view emphasizing the slow character of post-glacial inundation. The Storegga tsunami may have affected a landscape already largely submerged by the time it struck. The main objection is that artifact evidence from Dogger Bank suggests occupation continued into the period when the tsunami occurred. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the drowning of Doggerland underlies Atlantic mythologies of lost lands, including Irish traditions of drowned territories, Welsh legends of Cantre'r Gwaelod, and possibly the Atlantis narrative itself, a speculative cultural memory hypothesis proposed by some authors. The main objection is that the time depth between Doggerland's submersion and the earliest surviving written traditions is several thousand years, making direct narrative transmission difficult to establish. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree, that is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes submarine sediment cores from the Storegga Slide confirm a rapid mass movement event dated to approximately 200 years ago using radiocarbon and other chronometric methods. Cores from Scottish coastlines and the Shetland Islands contain discrete sand layers at inland positions consistent only with deposition by a large tsunami wave, independently corroborating the slide's date and the tsunami's landward extent. Norwegian sites show similar tsunami deposits in contemporaneous stratigraphic layers. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented artifacts from Doggerbank sediment cores and fishing trawlers, Mesolithic flint tools, antler harpoon points, and organic material radiocarbon dated to 7,0009,000 years ago confirm human occupation of the bank during the period when it remained above sea level. The recovered material is consistent in type and technology with Mesolithic assemblages from adjacent British and Danish sites, confirming these were the same cultural populations whose territories extended into what is now the North Sea. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed oil industry 3D seismic reflection survey data, reprocessed by Gaffney's team, has produced detailed topographic maps of Doggerland's former landscape at sub-kilometre resolution. River channels, lake basins, and coastal features are clearly visible in the data. The maps confirm the landscape would have been optimal Mesolithic habitat, rivers, wetlands, and gentle terrain with abundant ecological resources. This remote sensing evidence is now the primary tool for planning any future targeted submarine excavation of specific Doggerland features. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization. Now, we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Vincent Gaffney's research program at the University of Bradford has produced the most detailed maps of Doggerland to date, using repurposed oil industry seismic data. Targeted submarine excavation remains technically challenging and extremely expensive. Museum collections in Rotterdam, Cambridge, and elsewhere hold the trawler-recovered artifacts. A permanent exhibition dedicated to Doggerland opened at the Rijksmuseum van Oudheden in Leiden in 2023. Doggerland is increasingly studied as a prehistoric analog for modern rapid sea level rise, a real human civilization that was progressively and then catastrophically swallowed by a changing ocean. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made, new analyses are being published, new voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Doggerland Catastrophe, the North Sea tsunami that drowned an entire civilization, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Doggerland ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.